Turning to politics this morning, voters are increasingly skeptical over President Biden's ability to handle the job as he runs for re-election. A new NBC News poll finds that 68% have either major or moderate concerns that Biden does not have the necessary mental and physical health to be president. Let's bring in White House columnist for The Hill, Niall Stanage, and also NewsNation political analyst and former senior aide to Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Chris Hahn. Gentlemen, thanks both for being here. Niall, to you first, though. The president has really brushed off questions about his age. I mean, most recently saying he feels good. Voters will have to decide for themselves. But should the president be taking and addressing those concerns more seriously?
I don't know how he could do anything that would alleviate those concerns. It's really about minimising those concerns, Marky. And when you look at the polls, it's clear that those concerns, to some extent, transcend the usual predictable party lines. There are clearly some Democrats who are concerned about his age. So what can he do? Well, he can talk about his vigour. He can get things done. He can talk about the idea that age brings wisdom and competence. Beyond that, that's about as much as he can do, it seems to me.
Yeah, and that poll that you were referencing, I think it was, 47% of Democrats were also worried about his age as well. And also, to be fair, this same poll said 55% were concerned with Trump's mental and physical health, too. Chris, how do Democrats campaign around Biden's age? What do you do here? What's the strategy?
Well, look, there's nothing you can do about people being concerned about a man in his 80s health. I mean, that's something we're all concerned about at some level. But that said, Joe Biden is the most experienced elected official in this nation right now, who's got a lot of wisdom, and we're living in a world that has a lot of crazy problems going on. And Joe Biden has lived through a lot of these scenarios, and he is perfectly equipped to deal with them. The thing I took out of this poll was, even though Americans are concerned with his age, and Americans might even believe that this country's on the wrong track, they are still voting for him over Donald Trump, who is the likely GOP nominee at this point. And if I was taking something away from this, it would be that Republicans should be concerned about who they are nominating, because it is very clear to me that the one person who cannot overcome Joe Biden is Donald Trump.
And so is the strategy here just not to touch his age, though? Because age is very much on full display. I mean, speech fumbles, falling on stage, you can't deny that. So is the Democratic strategy just not to even go there?
No, I think Joe Biden's got to get out in the public. He's got to show people that he's up to the task. He's got to do what he can. I don't expect him to take his shirt off and do push-ups in jeans like some other people did over the weekend. But I do expect Joe Biden to be out there showing that he is capable to do this job. And let's be very clear. For a man his age, he's in remarkable physical condition. And I think a lot of the concerns about his age are just that, concerns because he is in his 80s, and we should be concerned about anybody in their age.
I think you're referencing RFK Jr. doing the push-ups in the denim that we played earlier on the show, which is remarkable.
Yeah.
Here we go. On your screen, politics aside, this is incredible. Yeah, he's 69 years old.
It's too early.
No, I beg to differ, Chris Hahn. Hey,
People
Niall,
are just waking up.
Yeah, they're enjoying their first cup of coffee. Hey, Niall, Hollywood mogul Jeffrey Katzenberg, as you know, who's now a campaign advisor for President Biden, reportedly telling the president to own his age. You know, just be all about it. Own it. Does that work?
I think the idea is that he would make the kind of argument that Chris has just made, that age brings sagacity and wisdom and prudential judgment. But I noticed that Jeffrey Katzenberg also suggesting maybe a lighter touch around his age. I think he may be thinking back a whole generation there. There was a famous presidential debate in the 1980s where there were concerns around President Reagan's age. And he was debating Walter Mondale, who was in his 50s, and Reagan said he would not use Mondale's youth and inexperience against him. Said it with a smile, of course.
One of the great lines of all time.
That was a way of diffusing the age issue for Reagan.
And speaking of debates, Chris, would President Biden agreeing to debate his Democratic primary opponents, albeit two, quell some of these tensions?
He's not going to debate these people. They are not serious candidates. First of all, who does push-ups in jeans? I think, we should all be worried about a person who would do that to begin with, at least on camera. But
judgmental, judgmental.
All it would do would be bring them up, right? And Joe Biden, they are not a challenge to Joe Biden at this time, nor do I believe they will be a challenge to Joe Biden at any time. So he should save his debating for whoever the GOP nominee is, assuming that the GOP nominee agrees to debate, which right now it appears they will not in the general election. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.